Today on Vintage Rocket, we're featuring Earl Quantz in his 1974 Suzuki GT550 two-stroke road bike. Okay, Earl, tell us a little bit about how you came about owning a 1974 GT550.
Well, it was a few years back. I was had a swap meet sitting at the door doing security with a young fellow, and he had a couple of these for sale. And we ended up talking about it, and I ended up coming home from the swap meet with two motorcycles.
All right. And what kind of condition was it in when you got it?
It wasn't in very good condition. There was lots of rust and corrosion on it, and but there was lots of bits of spare parts as well with it, so it was a pretty interesting purchase.
All right. Well, I know you love a good project, but all right. What can you tell us a little bit about this particular model and what makes it special?
Well, it's a two-stroke, and I grew up with two strokes with some small Yamahas when I first started riding motorcycles, and so I've always liked two strokes, and so I thought it would be nice to have, in this day and age, a two-stroke riding around the streets.
Okay. Well, I grew up as a Honda kid, and we had Hondas, and we had had a few Yamahas around the farm, but I didn't really know much about Suzuki. So prior to this, I had to go back and do a little research, and I noticed prior to 1976, all Suzukis were two-stroke, and so there really wasn't anything in their lineup till about 1976 with the GS750. So that's something I thought was rather unique about the Suzuki.
Yeah, Suzuki, their largest motorcycle for quite some time was the Titan, which is a 500, and this was there was three motorcycles created the same way. Same configuration. There was a 380, which is the Sebring, the 550, which is the Indy, which is this one, and then the 750, which is a water-cooled three-cylinder as well, and that was called the Le Mans.
Okay, and so I noticed, yeah, you mentioned the Titan 500. So it was a two-cylinder, two-stroke 500, and when I was comparing between the bikes, I see that this really wasn't rated at that much higher power, and they actually carried the Titan 500 for a couple of years while they were selling this one as well. So why do you think they made the change to have such a similar motorcycle but yet different?
Well, I think the 550 is a mid-range bike, and most of the manufacturers offer that. So they're a little less expensive than the larger motorcycle, and a little easier for people more slight to ride. And also the 380 was maybe a girl's bike.
I guess we'll look at some of the features of the bike. You have a disc front brake and a drum rear. Back around the early 70s there, was that standard or?
That's pretty much the configuration that most of the manufacturers are using at the time. The rear disc didn't come in for quite some time, but it stops adequately for the size of the motorcycle.
All right. Another thing that really jumps out at me here is the mufflers and the exhaust system, and I know you've spent a lot of effort getting them back to original condition, but the thing that really jumps out is we have a 3-cylinder motorcycle here with 4 mufflers. What's the story behind that?
I really think it's symmetry, and I think looking at the engineering that Suzuki puts into their motorcycles, that's one of the key features of their bikes. Everything sort of matches, and I don't think my guess is they didn't like the look of the 2 pipes on one side and one on the other.
Okay. So that would be like the Kawasaki's from the early 70s. They were 3-cylinder 2-strokes, but this is a lot different animal than what those Kawasaki's were. Like they seemed a little bit more raw and crude, and this seems to be a little bit like more refined motorcycle.
It is. I think it's built to drive in longer distances, and it's good around town, and for a long distance ride in the day, it's probably reasonable.
Okay. All right. So other features, ram air system. Tell us about that.
Well, as far as I know about the ram air, they took this off their G500 or their race bike, and it could be a bit of a marketing campaign. It also could improve the cooling of the middle cylinder, because that was always the concern of 3 cylinders, is the air cooling of the middle cylinder.
Okay, so it's ram air cooling, not induction for.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. You had also told me ahead of time that there was something a little bit unique about the carburetor setup on this bike, or at least kind of leading edge for Suzuki at the time.
Well, it's the first venture in for them for the push-pull throttle cables, which made it easier to hold the throttle at cruising speed, but also makes it easier for you to set up the 3 carburetors so they're properly synced.
Okay. Another little preview you gave me, you had told me that you had a lot of effort behind the gauges. Now, the gauges are immaculate, but what's the story behind the gauges?
Well, there wasn't much effort in me other than I talked to the fellow in the Caribbean who restores them, and he did them for me, and he does a beautiful job. They're like brand new. They take, even if you bought an old stock gauge from the day, you still got old grease in it, so he puts all new grease in it, and they work flawlessly.
Well, they certainly look great, and speaking of looks, I was kind of going around everything else first, but the paint, the quality of the paint, the color on this motorcycle is very unique, and it does really stand out in the sunlight. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, it's called Hawaii Green. That's the shirt. I'm just trying to match up with my girlfriend here. And
that explains the shirt.
It does. But they came in red or green, and the red one sold much better than the green one, so I'm not sure. But I kind of like the green color.
Yeah, for sure. And it certainly is rare. I don't know if I'd actually seen one that color before. It's a pretty rare bike to come across, even in general, but just the green is really something. Also with the paint, the emblems, they look new. What's the story?
They are new, and those were bought from Suzuki. They are new old stock that still available, as many of the parts are for this motorcycle.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, it is beautiful with all of that. So, all right. Well, I think we covered most of the features and everything with the bike. I have to say, when you rolled up the other night, we had a chance to go for a ride the other night, and you rolled up, and just the sound, the smell, it really took me way back. It's something you don't even think about when you're on modern motorcycles, but the sound of a 2-stroke and the smell, it just takes you to a different time. But what's it like to ride?
It's quite a comfortable motorcycle to ride. I rode it here today in about 40 miles, and it's just a beautiful cruising bike.
Yeah. Well, it does do pretty well out there. The road we were on the other night, though, it was kind of rough, a little bit twisty. How does it compare with, I guess, other bikes of that vintage or even more modern machines that you have?
Well, the older suspension is a little more harsh, but as far as handling and so on, it's a very well balanced motorcycle and nice power band, so it's not a lot of shifting, and you just roll it on and away you go.
Well, awesome. Well, I really enjoyed getting to talk to you about this bike today, Earl, and I look forward to getting out there with you sometime and along the way and going for another ride again. So thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Cheers.